this is Mrs. Roton, and I've got another challenge for you today. This is the visualization challenge. Remember, visualizing is making a movie in your brain while you are reading. So as the author is describing the setting and the characters and the action of the story, you are picturing that as you go. So for your challenge today, I want you to draw something that I'm going to read to you. So I'm going to be reading to you from Chapter 2 of The Wizard of Oz, and this is one of my favorite books. You've probably seen this movie. The book came first, and it has some really big differences. There are some similarities, but like the Wicked Witch gets melted like here. But there's so much book to go because there's a lot of stuff in the book that's not in the movie, and there's a lot of things in the book that are different than the way they're done in the movie. So I really recommend this book, and I think you should read it. But today I'm going to read you a little piece of it, and I want you to try and draw part of it. And you can take a picture of your drawing and send it to me through email, or you can post it on Facebook, and your parents can tag me in it. Yeah. All right. I suggest I suggest both, actually. Pausing the video and getting some paper and a pencil right now to draw, and also listening to this video more than once to help you get a really good picture in your brain. So I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but I'm going to read, this is the very beginning. Dorothy has just arrived in Oz. This first part is very similar. Her house gets sucked up in a cyclone and boom, dropped in Oz, in the land of the Munchkins. And she's just waking up in the morning and finding herself there. So this is her first look at Oz, and I would love for you to show me what you imagine when you hear these wonderful words. Chapter 2, The Council of the Munchkins. She was awakened by a shock so sudden and severe that if Dorothy had not been lying down on the soft bed, she might have been hurt. As it was, the jar made her catch her breath and wonder what had happened. And Toto put his cold little nose into her face and whined dismally. Dorothy sat up and noticed that the house was not moving. Nor was it dark, for the bright sunshine came in at the window, flooding the little room. She sprang from her bed and with Toto at her heels, ran and opened the door. The little girl gave a cry of amazement and looked about her, her eyes growing bigger and bigger at the wonderful sight she saw. The cyclone had set the house down very gently, for a cyclone, in the midst of a country of marvelous beauty. There were lovely patches of greensward all around, with stately trees bearing rich and luscious fruits. Banks of gorgeous flowers were on every hand, and birds with rare and brilliant plumage sang and fluttered in the trees and bushes. A little way off was a small brook, rushing and sparkling along between the green banks and murmuring in a voice very grateful to a little girl who had lived so long on the dry, gray prairies. While she stood looking eagerly at the strange and beautiful sights, she noticed coming toward her a group of the queerest people she had ever seen. They were not as big as the grown folks she'd always been used to, but neither were they very small. In fact, they seemed about as tall as Dorothy, who was a well-grown child for her age, although they were, so far as looks go, many years older. 3 were men and 1 a woman. All were oddly dressed. They wore round hats that rose to a small point a foot above their heads, with little bells around the brims that tinkled sweetly as they moved. The hats of the men were blue. The little woman's hat was white, and she wore a white gown that hung in pleats from her shoulders. Over it were sprinkled little stars that glistened in the sun like diamonds. The men were dressed in blue of the same shade as their hats, and wore well-polished boots with a deep roll of blue at the tops. The men, Dorothy thought, were about as old as Uncle Henry, for 2 of them had beards, but the little woman was doubtless much older. Her face was covered with wrinkles, her hair was nearly white, and she walked rather stiffly. When these people drew near the house where Dorothy was standing in the doorway, they paused and whispered among themselves, as if afraid to come farther. But the little woman walked up to Dorothy, made a low bow, and said in a sweet voice, "You are welcome, most noble sorceress, to the land of the Munchkins. We are so grateful to you for having killed the Wicked Witch of the East and for setting our people free from bondage." Dorothy listened to this speech with wonder. What could the little woman possibly mean by calling her a sorceress and saying she had killed the Wicked Witch of the East? Dorothy was an innocent, harmless little girl who had been carried by a cyclone many miles from home, and she had never killed anything in all her life. But the little woman evidently expected her to answer, so Dorothy said with hesitation, "You're very kind, but there must be some mistake. I have not killed anything." "Your house did anyway," replied the little old woman with a laugh, "and that is the same thing. See?" She continued, pointing to the corner of the house. "There are her 2 toes, still sticking out from under a block of wood." Dorothy looked and gave a little cry of fright. There indeed, just under the corner of the great beam the house rested on, 2 feet were sticking out, shod in silver shoes with pointed toes. "Oh dear," cried Dorothy, clasping her hands together in dismay. "The house must have fallen on her. Whatever shall we do?" "There's nothing to be done," said the little woman calmly. "But who was she?" asked Dorothy. "She was the Wicked Witch of the East, as I said," answered the little woman. "She has held all the Munchkins in bondage for many years, making them slave for her night and day. Now they're all set free and are grateful to you for the favor." So that is the beginning of Dorothy's adventure in Oz. I hope you will continue reading this book. But for today, listen to that again and draw a lovely picture for me of what you imagine Dorothy found in the land of the Munchkins. All right, can't wait to see what you come up with. Bye.